Hi guys, this is to give you a very special happy anniversary and to thank you, Mina, for a lifetime of memories and wonderful thoughts and experiences with you throughout the last 50 more years. From the first moment I met you in Warminster in the apartment that you and Ron shared with that incredible white leather dress, mini dress that we remember well, to just going out for dinner with you the other night. You have always included us as part of your family, and we have seen our children all grow up together. And it has truly been a lifetime of great memories. And I cannot thank you enough for being the wonderful friend that you are. So for both you and Ron, have a very happy 50th and enjoy many, many more years. And to your family, enjoy them. They're wonderful parents. Thanks, guys.
Hello, I'm Bill Sheehy, and it's November the 14th, a little afternoon, and Corey asked me to do a video, or several videos, to memorialize Ron and Mina. I've known them for a long time, and I was the best man in their wedding 50 years ago. So I guess Mina's known Ron for like 51 years, and I've known him for 71 years. So I think that that's a tribute to our patience and tolerance. So I'm going to start with Mina and just talk a little bit about her. Nancy's going to join me a little later, and then I'm going to talk about some stories to share with you, my experience growing up with Ron as a child, and some of my experiences with him as an adult. And then I'll talk about the depth of our friendship at the end. But in starting with Mina, it's among the people that are outside of my family, no one really comes to mind of someone I admire more than Mina. And there's a reason for it. Mina has an ability to make people feel good. She has an ability to be gracious, to always have a smile on her face, to always see the positive in life, to always turn things into what could be a negative into something that makes you feel good. She's fun to be around. She acknowledges your presence. She acknowledges your achievements. Beyond that, I don't think Mina gets anywhere near the credit that she deserves. And I'll put this in the form of an analogy of a juggler. You take a juggler and they're throwing 1 or 2 or 3 balls. That's relatively easy. And let's say those balls represent one of them household, or you're taking care of your house. So you're juggling a ball. Anybody can do that. Then you add to that you have a spouse. Most people have a spouse. With that spouse comes a family. So now you have a household and a family, and you have 2 balls that you're throwing up in the air. Well, then you have a social life, and you have friends. You have to reach out to them. You have to find ways to enjoy your life with friends. Now you have 3 balls. A little more complicated. Most people, with some practice, can do it. With Mina, then, you add a 4th ball, which is her 1st child, then a 5th ball, then a 6th ball, then a 7th ball, then an 8th ball. And you begin to understand that Mina is juggling 8 balls in the air at the same time with 5 kids, Ron, his family, all their social events. and running their household. Now they go along, and this isn't easy enough. Mina has to add a ninth ball. She goes back to work as a teacher. She has to grade papers as an English teacher. She has to deal with the complexities of a classroom and management. She now has a ninth ball on top of the eight she has. Then she turns around and she buys another house in Florida and has the transportation and all of the things that are involved with her adult children, grandchildren. It's a remarkable number of variables and balls she has in the air, and she doesn't drop them. Maybe occasionally, but in the aggregate, Mina does an extraordinary job of managing a complex set of variables with magnificent grace in a plume, and does so with a smile on her face. And I just want to tell you, of the people in this world who are my favorite, Mina Goldwhite is one of the nicest, sweetest, most accomplished people I've ever met, bar none. Now I'll talk about Ron. All right, now I'm going to talk about my relationship with Ron. My parents lived in Trenton when I was born. I was born in Mercer Hospital. And they moved to Yardley on June 1st, 1950. So I would have been 2 years and 8 months old. Ronnie would have been like 1.5. Not even 2 yet. So I didn't know anybody, of course. And my mother learned there was a little boy, 3 boys, that lived down the street, 5 houses below us on River Road. So she called Lavinia, and they agreed to bring one of the boys up to meet me. Now, Lavinia made a decision between Richie and Ronnie, because I was between them. Richie's a year older. He was a big boy. He was maybe 4.5, and I was 3.5 by the time we put this together. So he chose Ronnie. Now, it could have been Richie, in which case my life would have been changed, but I think Richie was out hitting golf balls out in the square at the time. He had his grandfather's spoon, hickory wooden shafted, and he was hitting line drives into the canal. So Ronnie was available, and we met in this little gazebo in the next door at the Mrs. Piper's house. And the two of us sat there, and we sized each other up. As I said, I'm 3.5, he's 2.5. And I thought, this kid's not a bad kid. He's a little young, maybe a little baby face, but we can make this work. And we have. And here I am, age 74, and we're still making it work. So I'd like to explain just a few of the humorous things that have occurred to us. And when you get involved with Ron, you get involved with crazy. And a lot of funny things have happened, and I'll go through a couple of them. But the first one I want to tell is more about the white boys in general. And it's a story about growing up. There's a lake behind our house, the Garliss's Lake. And I wandered over there. I was maybe 6 or 7 years old. And there were 3 boys, Robbie White and Gary Washburn and Skip Garliss, all of whom are 3 or 4 years older than me. And they're fishing. And they have their bread and their worms, and they put them on a hook and they throw them out with a bobber. and a little suddy would come along and grab the hook or the worm, and they'd pull it, and sometimes they would pull it and the fish had gotten the worm. Well, when they didn't catch a fish, they would take their pole and slam it in the water and say, shit, shit, shit. So Billy learns a new word. When you get angry or disappointed in something, that's what you say. So the next day, I'm over playing with Ronnie and Richie in their side lot, a game of croquet. And Richie, to no one's surprise, hits my ball, puts his foot on it, you're allowed to do this, and slams it across the yard. Now this, of course, evokes anger, and I've learned a new word to express my anger. So I take my mallet and I slam it on the ground and say, shit, shit, shit. Now, unbeknownst to me, Mrs. White is next door, and she's hanging clothes in the square, and she hears this. And she comes running over and she grabs me by the collar and says, Billy, we don't use that kind of language around here. Don't you say that kind of language. If you hear you again, I'm going to send you home. So I go, okay, that's fine, but I don't know what I did that was wrong, but I'm not going to do it again. So she goes in the house, but the windows are open. And sure as heck, Richie comes by and he hits my ball and slams it again to the other side of the yard. And I take my mallet and I say, shit, shit, shit. And Mrs. White comes storming out of the house. She is livid. She grabs me, turns me around. Billy, I told you not to use that word. We don't use that kind of language in this house. I'm sending you home. And when you go home, you tell your mother that Mrs. White sent you home. I go running off. I'm bawling. I'm all upset. This is traumatic to have Mrs. White yell at me to send me home, and I have to tell my mother why. I come in, my mother comforts me. What's wrong? I'm crying. Sit down. My father is home. It's a Saturday. And they sit down and I said, now, Billy, tell us why you're crying. I said, well, I was just playing croquet with Richie and Ronnie, and Mrs. White started screaming at me. I said, well, you must have done something. And I said, I don't know what I did. I don't know what I did. And they said, well, you must have done something. I said, well, I did use a word. And my father says, aha. Well, what was that word? And I said, shit. And the two of them sit back and they, feign this little parental scene here where they're going to get to the bottom of this. So my father says, well, do you know what that word means? And I said, no, I don't know what it means. And he goes, well, and Mom says, well, it means number 2. And I'm like horrified. Oh my God, this is terrible. But we move on. So my dad says, I have a question though, Bill. Where did you learn the word? And I said, well, I learned it the other day from the boys down at the lake. And then explained how they used the word every time they lost the bait and slammed their pole into the water. And he said, well, who was the first person you learned that word from? And I said, oh, well, that would be Robbie White. So my parents start laughing, and they just can't get over the irony of this. And I'm asking, well, what's so funny? What's so funny? And they say, well, we can't explain it to you. Someday you'll understand. And they were right. Okay, a few more stories. The year is maybe 1961. I'm like 13 and Ron's 12. And Skippy Garlitz had just purchased a boat and had learned to water ski. Flat bottom boat, simple, 13-foot boat, 25 horsepower engine. But we were young, and it's like April, and it's cold. The water is freezing cold and very high. So I asked Skippy if he'll teach us how to water ski. He says, sure. So off we go, just Ronnie, myself, and Skippy, and we go off into the middle of the river, and he gets the skis out, and there's no safety belt, just jump into the water, and he sort of shows us how to, what we should do, tells us what we should do, and he starts trying. And of course, Ronnie always has to be first, so Ronnie goes first, and after about 3 or 4 tries, he figures out how to get up, and he's a pretty good athlete, and he uses his balance and what have you, and it would fall and try again, but after several times, he gets up, and I'm pretty impressed. This is good. So he gets out. He's absolutely freezing. His lips are blue. It's so cold. And the water current is taking us down, and Skippy has to bring us all the way back up the river to in front of my house, and we start over again. And I gingerly get into this freezing cold water and start to try and figure out how to get these skis on. I'm 13 years old and never been in this kind of an environment, cold as hell. And Ronnie's telling me what to do, because after all, he's an expert now. And Skippy's telling me what to do, and Skippy's driving the boat. It takes me, my memory, 17 times of falling before I finally get up for maybe 50, 100 yards and fall, and I eventually learn how to do this. So we both learned, and we're happy. We're proud of ourselves. We had bragging rights. We water skied. And so I go home, and my mom, I get dressed in my clothes, and my mom asks me, how is my day going at dinner? And this is just the way it was back then. I said, well, it was good. I had an interesting day. I was water skiing. I learned how to water ski today. And you see, my mother and father, their faces, what are you talking about? And no, Skippy took us out on the boat. Maybe you heard us. We're out front. No, yeah, we were, Ronnie went. He did a little better than I did, but I got up, and we both learned how to water ski. Now, the funny part about this is that if today you saw 2 children, 13 and 12 years old, floating down the Delaware River with a 15-year-old at the controls of a boat in high water in the freezing cold in April, you would call the police. They would come, and they would have your parents end up explaining it to a judge in Doylestown for child abuse. But of course, that wasn't the way it was back then. And my parents congratulated me and told me that was wonderful, and that inspired me to later get a boat. So in chronological order, the next story I have is the classic, the airplane story. So this is a year later. It's maybe 62, and we're big boys now. I'm 14, Ron's 13, and we're driving home in Mrs. White's car. We were in Levittown shopping for something, and we're going down Trenton Avenue, and we see a sign next to the Marsville Airport. There's an airport there that said rides $5. So we look at each other, we get home, and we say, hey, did you see that sign, Ron? They get airplane rides. Yeah. So we scrounge around and somehow figure out where we can get $5. I don't know how we did, but we did. So we now get on our bikes and go up to the canal path and ride our bikes all the way up the Black Rock Road, up that steep hill, down Makefield Road, and off we go to the airport. We get there, And I get off our bikes, and we go in, and there's a lady standing behind the counter. And can I help you boys? Yeah, we want to go for an airplane ride. An airplane ride? Do you parents know that you want to take an airplane ride? And of course, without hesitation, Ron says, "Of course, my mom sent us here. She gave us some money and told us that we should go for an airplane ride." Skeptical, she calls, and this young man, pilot, he's got to be like 20, 21 years old, comes over and says, "You boys want an airplane ride?" We go, "Yeah, $5. We give him the $5. So it is hot as hell. We're walking to the airplane. I remember like it was yesterday. And Ron says, "I got shotgun," meaning he's going to sit next to the pilot. I'm going to sit in the back. Okay, all right. You got me, Ron, you got me. We get in. It is so hot. Glass cover. I'm in the back. We can't even breathe. They close the thing back up. Like, oh my God, we're going to die. Take off. Guy gets out, has to pull the engine to start it. Old rickety plane. We take off. And of course, we want them to pilot to take us to over our house. Where do we live? Oh, Yardley, well, the river, sure as head, buzzing over the house, buzzing back, what have you, over the neighborhood. We're looking down. So Ronnie, this isn't good enough. He needs to put a little spice in his life. So he tells the pilot, "Why don't you make some turns here?" And the pilot says, oh, okay, like go up and dive down and do some turns and what have you, make it sort of more fun. Now, I know I get air sickness, car sickness. Had never experienced air sickness yet, but I was about to. Within a few minutes of this, I get nauseous. So I tell him, "Look, I don't feel very good, mister." And he goes, "Well, there's a bag. There's a bag there in the back. Just, if you feel like you're going to puke, just puke into the bag." Well, as I'm fumbling for the bag, to find the bag, I decide that I can't hold it anymore. And I just puke all over Ronnie, who's sitting directly in front of me. And the puke is coming over his shoulder and the side of his face and just running down. Now, it stinks to the high heavens. And this pilot, he immediately makes a turn, and we head back to the airport and we land. So we get out, and Ronnie is not happy because we paid $5. We didn't get our money's worth. We were only up there. He would have taken us further had I not decided to puke all over him. So he's covered in puke and mad as hell. So we get in our bikes and silently we drive home. So we get home, and I go upstairs and get dressed, get changed, and my mother hadn't really noticed much in my demeanor. So we're at dinner. My parents oftentimes ask each of us, how our day went. It's part of our family ritual. And I said, "Well, I had an interesting day. Ronnie got mad at me." And my mother, very empathetic. "Oh, really? What did you do to Ronnie?" And I said, "Well, I threw up all over him." And she goes, "You what? Are you sick?" I said, "No, I'm not sick. I'm fine, but I threw up all over him." "Well, where were you that you threw up all over him?" And I said, "Well, I was in an airplane." And my mother and father, their head snaps. They go, "Billy, don't make up stories like this. What are you talking about?" And I said, "Yeah, I was in an airplane." "Did you remember this afternoon? Did you hear an airplane going overhead?" And she said, "Yeah, I do remember there was an airplane buzzing around overhead. Yeah, I do remember that. Why?" And I said, "Well, I was in it." I said, "You were in an airplane?" "You were in an airplane." Now you got to remember, my parents in 1962 They had never been in an airplane. They had never been in an airplane. I had. So instead of turning to, well, this is outrageous, you didn't ask me, you're a bad boy, you're going to be punished, there was intellectual curiosity. They wanted to know what it was like to be flying in an airplane. And I'm now the hero of the story, where I'm like, well, Ron and I are flying, down the river, and then we're... It turns out to be one of the truly funny stories of my life. The moral being that the interesting part of the story, from my vantage point, wasn't that I was flying an airport plane. It was that Ronnie was mad at me because I puked all over him and prevented him from completing his flight. That's the classic Ron story. Okay. So take us a couple years later, maybe 63, and Ron and I have go-karts. Now, I think the Whites may have had one of their own, but Hoffman had one, and they would lend it to us, and Calvin Day had one. So there were these go-karts. I didn't own them, but I ended up with Ronnie being in the Yardley Memorial Parade with his go-kart. And one of us was in the back, one of us was in the front. We changed over driving, what have you. And the idle in this was set so high that you either had your foot on the brake. If you take it off the brake, this thing just took off on you. And we're trying to judge in a parade with people with bicycles and cars and trucks and all kinds of marchers and paraders and firemen and military people. And we're weaving in and out because we can't control the speed of this go-kart. It just takes off us. And we're up on the sidewalks. Down, back onto the road, up to the sidewalks, weaving in between. It just goes on all the way through Main Street. People are yelling at us and throwing candy at us, and it was just a wild and crazy experience. So, Billy and Ronnie, 1962, in the go-kart. So then one day, and I do know the date, it's June the 4th, 1964. And we're both we were Dodger fans. They moved to Los Angeles a couple of years earlier. And Sandy Koufax was in his prime in 64. And we decided to skip school. So we did. And somehow we made it to Yardley train station, got on the train, and took the train to Philadelphia. And Ronnie and I sat in the bleachers, and at this time we're like, 16 and 15, 14, 1964, and we watch a no-hitter, okay? In the 8th inning, Dick Allen draws a walk, but then he tries to steal second, he gets thrown out, okay? So in the 9th inning, they bat to only 27 batters, the last one being for the pitcher, Bobby Wine, who gets up, and we're looking at each other. This is like a 240 batter. We're going to put him in, and and he strikes out. Sandy Koufax struck out at 12, and it was a no-hitter. So of course we can't tell our parents or anyone else because we had skipped school. So I come home, and my father's a big Philly fan. He loved the Phillies. Watched any game he could his whole. So I come home, and he had been working that night, so I don't see him until the next morning. So we get up, and it's Friday. It's early in the morning, and Dad says, "Oh, Bill, I got to tell you, Sandy Koufax last night. You're a big Dodger fan. Oh, you would have loved it. He pitched a no-hitter. Can you believe it? Against the Phillies." And of course, I can't tell him, Dad, I was there. I can't tell him that because I had skipped school. It was a Thursday. Matter of fact, I just looked that up and researched it on Google that day, and it was Thursday, June 4th, 1964. Ronnie and Billy take a train, go to Philadelphia, and watch, the only baseball game I have ever been to in my life until I was well into my 50s was this one game, and it's a no-hitter with Sandy Koufax. When you get involved with Ron, you get involved with crazy. Okay, we're up to like 1963, 1964, and we would take our boats to get service at a place called Jimmy Abbott's in Titusville. And one day I'm there and I'm looking in the window and I see that there's a boat show in Titusville on the 4th of July. So I go back and I say to Ron, hey Ron, there's a boat show and we trick ski. We had learned how to turn around, do 360s, ski backwards, and we had this trick where one of us would be skiing, sometimes slalom, sometimes with 2 skis, but the other person would then turn around and skiing backwards would cut in front of the person who would be behind them on skis, one in a short line, the other in a longer line, and we would cut across and then cut back again. It's pretty cool, it's pretty fun, and no one else among us water skiers, only Ron and I skied backwards. Richie and Hoffman and Robbie and Calvin Day, they were excellent, slalom skiers, but Ronnie and I were the only ones who tried to ski backwards. We learned how to do it. I had bought some trick skis and we went out and we taught ourselves how to do it. So we called Jimmy Abbott and asked him if he can, pencil us into this show he happens to be involved in. So off we go, and I believe Richie went with us in my boat, and we head up over the falls, out of the Scudder's Falls. There's a way to get there. It's a whole different story. And take up the Jersey side and end up in Lambertville at this boat show on the 4th of July. I believe it's 1963 or 64, one or the other. At any rate, we're there, and there's a slalom contest. And all 3 of us participate in that. And I fall, and and I think Richie either wins it or does very well. But one of us, did very well. So now it's time, and the water is choppy because there were boat races where these boats would run around and chase each other in circles and speedboats, and the water is very choppy with the water skiing and all. It's now time for Ron and I to do our little show. So Ron had the shorter line, and he was to turn around and ski backwards on the trick skis, about that long. They have no fins, so you turn on them. And Ron's pretty good. And I had the longer line, and I chose to go slalom. You don't want 2 skis. This is a show now, and I'm going to be slalom skiing. And Ron would come along, and I would pull the line up, and he would ski under me, and then I would ski this way, and then we'd be on both sides of the boat, and then we'd come back again, and we would do this, and then Ron would turn back around, and this was our little show. So we get out there, it's choppy, it is so choppy, and we get out, and to Ron's credit, he turns around, and I'm shocked, but here he is, I'm over here, and Ron's over there, and now it's time, we nod to each other, we have our signals down, and Ron's skiing backwards, he turns the skis, he's got the thing behind him like that, and he turns it, and he goes right in front of me, he comes right in front of me, and his wake, I have to be moving the opposite direction, because if I hit his wake, I'm going to go down. Well, I don't turn fast enough to hit into his wake. I catch it sideways, and of course, I go head first into the water, flip out. Now Ron is in this choppy water, But he now has a ski line he has to deal with. My fallen ski line is in the water, and the handle's, throwing the water up. And I'm there in the water looking at this as Ron is going down, skiing backwards, looking at me and the line, alone, trying to do this trick. And it's just one of these funny moments of your life where you're in this choppy water doing a show and you've lost it. And so Ron, turns around and we finish our show and people give us a hand and they pick me up. And we have a good laugh. Ron really wasn't upset over it. It was treacherous conditions. But that was Ron and Billy do the Titusville water show, which turns out to be a disaster. So the next story will bring us to our early 20s, 72 or 73. And Nancy had just joined teaching at Pennsbury, and Ron was living in Langhorne. He was actually studying to get his MBA. He was studying at Rutgers. And I brought with me a sheet of paper for the following Saturday's picks in this pool that Nancy, put $5 into to pick these college teams. Now, I don't know anything about college football. Couldn't care less. And Ron was no expert either. But we wanted to play the game, so we're talking about them and who was going to beat who and what have you. So we finally come down to this one team, and it's Northern Michigan against Davenport. Okay, whoever the hell they are. Okay, two teams in Michigan. We know nothing about them. And I flippantly say to Ron, well, we ought to call Jimmy the Greek. Now, Jimmy the Greek was the god back then. He was the bookmaker in Vegas. He had his own show. He was the guy. He was the guru's guru. When the gurus needed an answer for football, they called Jimmy the Greek. So Ron says, okay, and he starts taking this seriously. We're laughing. It was a joke. But we call the information in Vegas, get the area code, and Ron dials a number. And the operator gets on, hello, right? I'm looking for Jimmy the Greek. And the operator says, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know what you mean. You'll have to give me a last name and a first name. So Ronnie goes, last name is Snyder. First name is either James or Jimmy. And wait a few seconds, we're trying not to just lose it. And she goes, okay, hold for the number. Ding-a-ling-a-ling, ding-a-ling-a-ling, ding-a-ling-a-ling. And the man answers, deep voice. Hello, this is Jimmy. Ron is shocked. He says, oh, Mr. Snyder, I'm wondering if you could help us with the football pick. He goes, what? A football pick? He goes, who's talking? He says, well, I'm Ron, he gives him some phony names, like Ron Johnson or Ron Jones or something. And I'm with the Philadelphia Inquirer. He goes, yeah, well, what's the game? And Ron says, Northern Michigan against Davenport. And Jimmy says, well, I mostly do professional, but I know a little bit about college. What's the spread on this game? Ronnie says, it's 5.5 points, Davenport plus 5.5 points. And Jimmy says, that's ridiculous. Northern Michigan will kill them. They've got a much better defense. With that kind of a spread, I'd go with Northern Michigan. So Ronnie goes, okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. Snyder. Thank you for calling. Oh, anytime. Now we're big buddies, right? Anytime. Happy to help. Good luck, boys. So we hang up the phone, and we were laughing so hard. We're having ourselves silly. Like, we just talked to Jimmy the Greek. We just got advice from Jimmy the Greek at a college football game. So, of course, Saturday comes, and we're very anxious to see what's going to happen. And, of course, Davenport kills them. they just blow them out, okay? So Jimmy the Greek, the moral of the story is, Jimmy the Greek doesn't know any more football than anybody else. He's got a good get going. But I mean, can you imagine us explaining to the, the people in that pool that, we would have won the pool, except, we lost, we picked Northern Michigan. It should have picked, Davenport. But we got some bad advice. We called Jimmy the Greek in Las Vegas, and he gave us some bad advice. Did I mention when you get involved with Ron, things get crazy? Last story. This is an adult story, actually. This is goes back maybe 4 years ago. Ron gets his license and to fly an airplane. Okay, so he just got it, and he wants me to take me for a ride. Very nice of him. So he calls me one afternoon and tells me, he wants me to go for an airplane ride with him that day. So I meet him over at Mercer Airport, and we drag out this plane, and we get in it, and off we go in a little while to yonder. And, I'm impressed. Ron's flying this plane, We go up the river, we go to this place, this little dinky airport. I don't know the name of it, but he thought it was a cool place to go. And then he says, well, let's go down the shore. Okay, well, that's fine. So we fly down, down the shore and go down the shoreline and see the shore and the ocean and what have you. And we're down, in the southern part of the state. And I keep asking, do we have enough gas to get back? Yeah, we got plenty of gas. We're doing good. Okay. So we head home. Meanwhile, it's starting to get dark. It's summertime, but it's getting dark. And we start to look for the airport, which is Mercer. And we see these lights down there, and says, oh, I think that's Mercer Airport down there. I said, well, you think? He said, yeah, well, maybe it is. Now, you got to remember that I'm looking for declarative statements, factual statements like that is the airport, not that's maybe the airport. I'm not looking for interrogatories here. I'm looking for declaratives. So, well, no, I don't think so. Okay. Well, are we lost, Ron? Well, we're not exactly lost, but I'm not sure where we are. Oh, okay. Well, are we in New Jersey? Yeah, we're in New Jersey. Okay. Yeah, well, that dark spot back there, that was the Jersey Pines, yeah. Okay, well, can I make a suggestion? I don't, want to tell you how to fly. All right, Billy, what do you want? I said, well, if we're in New Jersey, if you head dead west, we have to find the Delaware River, right? We know that's dead west. He said, yeah, so we find the river, we'll head north, and we can find, start looking at bridges, and we'll find the Scudder's Falls Bridge, and we're home. I'm sure as heck. He sets the thing, dials the stuff, and all we go west, out of our way, but west, and we find, sure as heck, there it is, the Delaware River. Go north, and we're heading now north. By this time, it's not quite pitch dark, but it's getting quickly dark. And we go up and we see the train bridge, and there it is, the Scudder's Falls Bridge. You can see it ahead, and we're flying over the river. And I said, okay, well, there it is. We know where we are. And Ron starts circling around, and he's circling around the airport. And then he's circling around the Yardley Country Club. And then we're back over the river again. And then we're back over again. And I said, Ron, we're already here. This is Mercer Airport. Why are you circling? By this time, it's pitch black. And he turns to me and he says, well, I'm trying to figure out what the lighting is here. I said, the lighting? He said, yeah, I've never actually landed in the dark. Now, I'm in an airplane with Ron. He just got his license. Now, he invited me on this trip to, have some fun in his airplane. I didn't think that I was going to be involved in a training session on how to land an airplane in the dark. I hadn't planned on it. Okay, so I'm trying to keep cool. Oh, okay. Yeah, so you've never landed in the dark before? No, but there's runway lights. There's runway lights. I got to figure out where they are and line them up. I said, okay, so that's why we're circling. Yep. Okay. So off we go one more time, and we go over, and I'm looking down, I'm saying, Ron, I believe that is Trenton Country Club below us. And there's the river, and up we go, and we start to turn like this, and I go, okay, and we're turning, and he straightens the thing out, and right in front of us are two lines of lights, and the runway is just a little slanted upward, and over Scotch Road, and boom, boom, boom. We land, and I am a very happy man to have found that ground. And it was just another example. You get involved with Ronnie, and you're up in an airplane on a training session on how to land in the dark. And he didn't want to learn. He didn't want to learn alone. He wanted to bring his buddy with him. So we did. So that's another story of Ron White. Okay, this is my last segment, and I will attempt to be a little more poignant, and I'll talk about Ron. The question at hand is, why am I still friends with Ron after 71 years? And we were out last Wednesday night in Lambertville for dinner. And it's easy, of course, to have a friendship with someone where you have so much mutual background. We don't have to introduce the characters in our lives because we already know them. We already understand them. We don't have to explain where we came from or who we are or our backgrounds or occupations. So it's never this fumbling when you meet someone at a cocktail party and, gee, you live in this neighborhood, or where'd you know Ron? It's, we know Ron, and he knows me. So that's a comfort, but that's not the only reason. I have, common experiences with other people, but they're not, I don't have the friendship with them that I have with Ron. So the secret sauce, and I got thinking about it a little bit in preparation for this, is that Ron and I share values. We not only share experiences and fun together, but we share some mutual values that in the absence of those values, we wouldn't have the kind of friendship that we enjoy. And I think it revolves around, we're very fortunate to marry women that we deeply love and care about. And the reason we're making this film is because Ron has been married for 50 years to Mina. And in order to maintain that kind of a relationship when more than half the people who graduated from Pennsbury at 65 are divorced, and 66 for that matter, there has to be something that goes to Ron's commitment to family. And it has to go to the fact that he is committed to doing things for his family that drive them toward the love that he has for them and they have for him, and the mutual respect that all of them hold for Ron and Mina and their relationship. And Corey said something to me that was sort of interesting when we were talking about this last week. He said, it's amazing, Billy, I call myself Bill, but I allow him to call me Billy, rare exception with the white children. But he said, my mom and dad can get in a car, and we're in the back, And we can drive for hours and they're still talking and laughing. And that is something that is very unusual. And it struck me because it is. And it goes to the fact that the two of them, as different as they are, share values as well. And one of the things that they share is that they were committed to educating all 5 of their children. Now, I'm not saying they all went through in 4 years, and there were been some struggles, but they all made it, and they all got their education, and they're all off on their careers, and they're doing what they want, and they're fulfilling their own goals. And that's a common goal for Ron and myself, is to have our children do what they want. And Ron values achievement. I mean, he's been an accomplished person. MBA, CPA, accomplished mortgage banker, accomplished golfer, accomplished pilot. He does things that matter, and he does them well. And I admire that in him, and it's the root of our friendship, and that he, acknowledges some of the things that I've done in my life. The other thing that I point out is that Ron has a sense of open-mindedness that permeates everything he does. And I'll tell you, first of all, what he's not, and then what he is. And it's easier to tell you what it's not because it explains much of his thinking. He's not a racist. He doesn't think that because his surname is white, that he's superior to anybody else. I've never heard him make a slur or say anything that would lead anyone to believe that he doesn't treat all people the same. He's not a misogynist. I mean, he treats mine with the utmost respect, and women and their accomplishments, and encourages them. And he's certainly not a xenophobe. He realizes, that he came from privilege. I guess he doesn't think that just because we stole us good white people stole the Americans from the Native Americans fair and square by taking their land and imposing our disease on them, that people outside of this nation can't come here and be welcomed. And I admire that in him, especially since both of my children married immigrants. He's not, a homophobe. He's not threatened by other people and what they do. He's not a gun advocate. He's an open-minded, sincere, honest guy who puts his thoughts together in a very, very well constructed manner. And those are the values that if we had not shared them through the ages, we would not have survived a 71-year friendship. To tell you a few of the things in addition is that, he's not a bragger. He's not someone who needs to, tell you how great he is or show off, or he's not a gossip. He doesn't sit around, trying to put other people down or, manipulate circumstances where he's trying to, make other people feel inferior to him. And he doesn't grossly just exaggerate. We all exaggerate a little bit. I may have even exaggerated a little bit today, who knows. But, when he tells you something, it's based in facts. It's based in statistic and data. And he's careful not to make assertions about things unless he understands that there's some truth to it. So just to summarize, and I'll finish this up, is that Ron is a lot of fun to be with because he's adventuresome. He will do things that other people won't do. He just has that spark, that little trace of larceny in him that makes him an interesting person. That makes him someone, when we were younger, we could get into a little bit of mischief, but not anything that was destructive. And he's loyal. He's been loyal to me. He's never let me down in terms of his loyalty. And in a word, Ron is irreplaceable to me. He is an irreplaceable asset. There are only a few assets in my life, my wife, my family, my children, that are irreplaceable. And Ron is one of them. And my life has been materially increased in value as a result of meeting a 2.5-year-old boy in Mrs. Piper's side yard, sitting on a stone bench in a gazebo and sizing each other up. And I made a value judgment then that I wanted to be Ronnie's friend. I'm 74. Nothing has changed. Happy anniversary.